Hello, my name is Jess Hay from Creative Cards to You. Today I am going to be using stamping foam to create unique backgrounds and then turn them into cards. Stick around. To begin with, I took these two stamp sets from Catherine Pooler, the Candy Shop stamp set and the Hey Sugar Sentiment stamp set, and I just started arranging them on the acrylic cover of my mini Misty. Now you'll notice that I put the sentiment strip on here, not realizing that when I stamp it, it's going to stamp backwards. But don't worry, I'm going to show you how I fix that mistake. I also put a cut piece of cardstock underneath the stamps so I could get a sense of how they would look like on the background. And then just rearrange things until it seemed just the way I wanted it. I took a piece of large Simon Hurley stamping foam and heated it up with my heating tool, making sure to get heat evenly distributed all around the stamping foam so that when I do turn it over, it will take the impressions. I did stand up and put a lot of pressure on the stamping foam when I pressed it into the stamps to get solid impressions. One of the things I love about Catherine Pooler inks is they have a color wheel that can help you choose colors. So I used this color wheel and chose the tetrad of Eucalyptus, Clove Blue, Sparkling Berry, and Apricot. I then started applying ink to the stamping foam by putting the ink pad on the foam directly. I started with the lighter colors first of Apricot and Sparkling Berry, and then moved to the darker colors of Cove Blue and Eucalyptus. I started using a blending brush to apply ink to the stamping foam because I didn't want to contaminate the ink pad with the colors that were on the stamping foam. I added more color to the stamping foam and kind of used the blending tool to blur the edges so that you wouldn't see harsh lines. I got a piece of cardstock ready and then used my Tim Holtz distress sprayer to give a few mists of water to the stamping foam. I used my blending brush to kind of get some of the large water drops off, and I pressed the stamping foam onto the paper firmly. It was at this moment I realized, oh no, the sentiment is backwards, so I put on my thinking cap to problem solve that situation. I knew I wanted to make a new card, so I used my heating tool to heat up the stamping foam and clear it from the old impressions. I rearranged the pieces and heated up the stamping foam to make a new background. I got more adventuresome this time, adding ink directly to the stamping foam with my ink pads, being careful not to get ink onto the ink pads themselves, and voila! Look how it turned out, getting two backgrounds from this batch of ink. I used Catherine Pooler's Notecard Postage and Scallops and dot dies to create backgrounds for the cards. I also cut an extra background from white cardstock for added depth and dimension. I cut this tag from Catherine Pooler's Notecard frame and tag so that I could cover up my error on the one background. The sentiment will fit perfectly into that inside portion of the tag frame. I am using Brutus Monroe's stick and stamp mat that I cut down to the size of my mini Misty to hold the paper while I am stamping it. I decided to use Cove Blue for my color because I thought it would stand out nicely against the background. I used a Versamark ink pad that is colored and has dark spots on it, so that is why I didn't clean the stamp off before using it with the ink. I sprinkled it with a super fine clear embossing powder by Ranger Ink and heat set it. I put it up against the card to look and decided that I didn't quite like the white and I wanted to step it up a little bit. So I used the sparkling berry and a blending brush to put some color on the white tag. It felt a little bit flimsy to me, so I decided to glue it onto another piece of the tag that I had cut to make it feel a little bit thicker and be more sturdy. I wanted to add more than the sentiments, so I put a new piece of cardstock in my stamping platform, and I also arranged some stamps on the cardstock so that I could put some sweet treats on the card. You'll notice that I am adjusting the back platform of the Misty so that I make sure that the paper hasn't moved and so that the stamps can stamp exactly in the same place. I am using a low-tack tape from scrapbook.com to mask off part of the candy stick so that I can stamp one in one color and the other stick in another color. The colors I am using are Cove Blue, Sparkling Berry, and Eucalyptus. I put clear embossing ink on the stamps and then used Ranger's super fine embossing powder to make the colors pop. I then used one of the little candies with different colors to fill the jar up. I decided to glue this panel to another piece of paper for some added dimension. I have an Anna Griffith Empress die cut machine that has magnetic cutting mats, which is one of my favorite features. So I don't need to use tape to adhere my die cuts to the paper. I'm just very careful with putting the cover plate on and running it through the machine so it doesn't wiggle around once I have them in place. I then cut this tag to the right size, and I used foam tape to put on the back of the tag. I then put it right over the spot on my background where I had that error, and voila, you would never know it. I had some issues with iMovie not importing clips into the library, but I did finish this off by splattering some white gouache paint on it, gluing everything down, and putting some sequins on. I didn't show everything on this next card as it uses many of the same techniques as I already demonstrated in the first card. I used Catherine Pooler's Scribbled Circles stencil set to add some interest to the postage stamp die cut that I put my sentiment on. This is one of my favorite techniques when I am making a sentiment, as I think it really makes it stand out. I used clay mask, Cove Blue, Eucalyptus, and Sparkling Berry to stamp and die cut some of the candies from the stamp set to use in this card. I used foam tape to put the candies on the card, and there you have one more card with a unique background. Thank you for watching. I added an extra card that I made from the different backgrounds. Leave a comment below telling which is your favorite card. Thanks for watching to the end. Here are some pictures of my trusty sidekick, Watson.